Okay? Shing! All right, Mr. Bones, are you ready? So, the first timeline is from the creation date. There's a little debate on it, but again, if we count all of the years of everybody given, we know we're pretty exactly close. There's a little discrepancy in when Abraham was born because he was not born as the first child to Terah, which would have been in the year 1948. But aside from that, so some say it was when Terah was 135, some say when it was 145. And that gives us our two different timelines. Again, a half a year can turn into 2 years, which is the difference we see here. So if 3983 was correct, then that means we're already in year 6006. The one I'm leaning more towards is that Terah was 145 when he had Abraham, which was in the year, get this, if Terah was 145 when he had Abraham, that would have been the year 2023 from Adam. But it was also 1948 BC. So that should be very exciting to everybody. The true, and I wish I had that on here, but I'll show that. Gary at unsealed.org has that on his website timeline. Okay, so that's the only discrepancy. So we know we're, with this timeline of creation date 93971 BC, then we know that we are entering into the change of the year, 5783, which will actually be 5993, 7 years before the 6000. So that coincides with 2023 to 2030. All right? So that's number one. The Lord prophesied he'd give us 6,000 years. That's in the first sentence from Bereshit, bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. There is 6 alephs in there, which spells 1,000, so 6,000. Then also in Revelation 27 and in Peter, where he says a day is like 1,000 years to the Lord, and he created the earth and everything in it in 6 days and rested on the 7th. So that's our 6,000 year prophecy. Now we go to Nebuchadnezzar. You remember Nebuchadnezzar, Mr. Bones? Never can remember. Yeah, real cute. That was my son did that in one of his first school plays. Nebuchadnezzar took Israel captivity in 605 BC. So from 605 BC, and we've also looked at 606, and some people have even looked at 604, but it is 1,290 years to the Dome of the Rock, and this was a range again, but from 687, add 1,335 years, brings you to 2022 or 3, and the 7-year period from 23 to 30. When Nebuchadnezzar was made a beast for 7 years, that was recorded in their literature of when Nebuchadnezzar went insane. That was in 574 BC, or the year 3187 for the Hebrews. 1,260 years brings you to the same time, Dome of the Rock. And again, if you look at the Hebrew years, the Gregorian year is straddling 2 Hebrew years, or the Hebrew years straddling 2 Gregorian years. So that's how we can always add or subtract a year. And then the same 1335. From Cyrus' decree, which was 70 years after them being taken captive, Cyrus decreed that they could return to the land in 537 BC. This one, again from C.J. Lovick, he did the math of 2520. You recognize that number. That's the number of days of the tribulation, or a 7-year period, 1260 and 1260, times a 360-day biblical year, brings us exactly to 1948. from 1948, 70 to 80 years, brings us to 2023-30. Okay, 70 years after captivity, they were free to return. But 80 years after that, Artaxerxes made the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem in 457 BC. So the book of Daniel had a specific prophecy about from the going forth of the commandment to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah shall be, and that's our 77s. So from Artaxerxes making that decree, using that same formula, brings us to 2029. From the decree, it would be 7 sevens and 62 sevens until Messiah. And so we add 7 sevens, brings us to 408 BC, 62 sevens, 27 AD, when the Lord Jesus started his ministry. 3.5 years into it, we could be looking at 30 AD or 31 AD. Both of those, Passover was on a Wednesday, which is what is necessary in order to have a Sunday resurrection. Passover Wednesday goes into the grave, which would start Thursday. He's in the grave Thursday night, Thursday day. Friday night, Friday day. Saturday night, Saturday day. Comes up before sunrise on Sunday morning. So that could be 30 or 31. And 3.5 years later was 34 AD when Stephen was stoned and Paul got the revelation on the road to Damascus. Add 2,000 years to that, we're looking at 3031. The sorrow cycles, this is from Jarrett at Supernatural by Design. And he found that every 18 years and 11 days, there was these blood moon cycles that coincided with Israel's history. So like World War I and the Great Depression and the blood moons after Israel became a nation. And on this point, we know the Lord's count will be perfect, that he will return to rescue Israel, Jerusalem, before they turn 81. So if we are heading towards the end of this, 28, 29, 30, they're going to look like they're over 81. The prophecy says, look at the fig tree when you see them put forth leaves. So it's a tree now putting forth leaves. That could imply the documentation, which would highlight 49 or 50 even. Okay, so we have to acknowledge that that's a possibility, otherwise we're kind of running out of time. But 67 and 8, that was the 6-day war. 85, 86, Israel politics. 2003 and 4, I can't remember about that. But the final one just ended in 2022. So now we're in a new cycle. Perfect time for a new beginning. The Suleiman decree was just like the decree that Daniel got of 457 BC, from the going forth of the commandment to restore and rebuild, will be 7 Shemitahs and 62 Shemitahs. The Suleiman decree, okay, Israel or Jerusalem was destroyed again. The temple, not one stone was upon another. So there was another decree, and as the Lord always does, multiple fulfillments of prophecy. So from that decree in 1535 to 39, the end of the Shemitah was at 39. So we do 7 Shemitahs of years, 7 sevens, brings us to 1588. 62 Shemitahs brings us to what we thought the Shemitah would start in the 7th month in 2022. But you realize as we say it like that, it doesn't make sense, does it? It should start at the 1st month of the first next year, which is 2023 through 30. Okay, so the world wars. This is from our brother Bob Barber. From these, again, Shemitah cycles, from World War I, right in the middle of a Shemitah cycle, ran for 3.5 years. Right afterwards was the Balfour Declaration that elevated Israel. Then, from 38 to 45, World War II, and it was the end of 38. 7-year period, representing what will happen at the end, the 7-year World War III. And in the midst of the World War, an escalation when the Satan, the Antichrist or pseudo-Christ, sets up the abomination that makes desolate, and the children of Israel flee into the mountains where they're protected for 1,260 days. So we got an escalation in the midst of a Shemitah, and then elevation of Israel. World War that takes a whole Shemitah cycle, elevate Israel 3.5 years later. World War III should be encompassed within this time period. This one's the most exciting to me. So first of all, if you read the book of Daniel and the book of Ezekiel, they're both doing the same thing. They're talking about how Israel has become unfaithful to God and they are seeking other gods. They are seeking false god, idol worship. So all of the trouble in the Bible that the Lord really cares about, that brings the death, destruction, and the wrath of God, is the seeking after false gods and idols. It's not the individual sins, although a lot of false god worship includes doing sins, like orgies and promiscuous sex and worshiping of the human body, drinking blood and defiled things and food offered to idols. So they kind of can go hand in hand. But what God really cares about is that they are worshiping the wrong God. So in the book of Ezekiel is shown what they're doing in the temple is worshiping the wrong gods. And of course they have temple prostitutes and everything, but it's about false god worship. So the Lord says, Ezekiel, I want you to lie on your side for 390 days. And then he says, a day for every year of their punishment. And then lay on your right side for 40 days, a day for a year. So we know God's looking at 390 years and 40 years. So he says, because they are seeking after false gods. Now, I am going to punish them and bring fury and wrath and destruction to chasten them and bring them back to me. But the end of the story of Ezekiel, just like the end of the story of Daniel, is the false gods are defeated and then the true God comes to reign. So when Daniel gives us a timeline about the end, we know the timeline is about the tribulation, destroying all the false gods and Satan and the false prophet and the beast, and then restoring the true king. Ezekiel is the same story. You can read through it and you hear about all the destruction of the false gods and the false idols and why Israel and Judah are being attacked and what is the time period they will be. And then the restoration will be the final Shemitah cycle where the Lord destroys all the false gods and then sets up his true millennial reign. So, again, this is all thanks to C.J. Lovick. I think that video, Mr. Bones, has got over 1 million views. Oh yeah, I think it's heading towards 1.5 million. Keep it going, people. Yeah, I just absolutely love it. But this was the most exciting thing. And these timelines confirm each other. So the Lord said that Israel, the northern kingdom, would be punished 390 years. That first siege on Israel by the Assyrians was in 701 BC. Then Judah, the second siege was in 70 AD. So from those two sieges on Jerusalem, and in 70 AD, the whole temple was destroyed, not one stone was upon another at the 9th of Av. But as CJ points out, the siege started at Nisan 14. Okay, so it was tied exactly to Nisan 14. If we have a year 30 crucifixion, and then exactly 40 years on Nisan 14, that is such God's style. So I double love that. But a perfect number of 701 You know, the first sentence of the Bible is 2701 in its value, which also is the number of days of 7 years and 6 months. A little bonus for those of you that have been following us. But between these is 770 years. Perfect number, perfect number, perfect number. Then, this is just so amazing. This should get everybody just really excited. I get excited about all this, but adding this cherry on top is just like, all right, we are here. We are here. 390, because the Lord said, if you will still, after I chasten you with a siege and captivity, etc., if you still won't obey me, I'll multiply your trouble times 7. So 390 times 7 is 2,730 years. So from 701 BC brings you right to 2030. From crucifixion, which was Judah rejecting Christ, they were chastened for 40 years and ended up with the complete destruction of the temple. Did they then turn to Jesus as Messiah? No. So the Lord not only says, I will punish you 7 times, but he says, I will punish you 7 times 7. So 7 times 7 times 40 equals 1960 from 70 AD brings you exactly to 2030. So these two timelines confirm each other, and this timeline of double confirmation helps us confirm the rest of these timelines that we're seeing.